We're going to go ahead and get started here at the Fabricator Stage. Come join us for the Fabricators Forum. We've got a great group of panelists. I'll have them all introduce themselves, but Fabricators Stage, Fabricators Forum is beginning now. Come join us. Go. Whatever you want. You want to sit? You want to sit? I'll stand. Yeah, you want to sit? Let's start with Eric. Do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Will they
should
have feedback if we...
I think they're doing a good job with controlling it. I just can't stand in front of...
Okay, my name is Eric. Been in the fabrication business, I guess, for 20 years. Was not from the industry, got involved in the industry. I always say white collar mentality, blue collar space, and we did fairly well. And had a business that we started actually here in Atlanta, 4 locations in the Southeast, and then we sold in 2017. And since I've been consulting, a lot of great relationships, a lot of great friends from the industry, and it's a unique industry for sure. I say the ultimate team sport because very few industries where you're responsible for the sales of it, the manufacturing, and then the installation. So it wears a lot of different characteristics, which takes a lot of teamwork. So.
I am Justin Zachary. I own a company called Creekside Granite. We are relatively, I'd say, small. I started in 2008 out of my garage with hand tools, and now we have a 30,000 square foot facility, digital template, full digital. So we've made a little leap since then, but we still keep it small and keep our prices up and don't try to race to the bottom.
I'm Joe Duszka. I'm the owner and president of Carolina Custom Surfaces in Greensboro, North Carolina. I've been in the stone business or the countertop business for about 20 years as well. Cut my teeth in the commercial roofing and then windows industry, and then moved indoors to countertops, and bought a small culture marble shop in 2004, and eventually expanded into solid surface and then in stone in 2006. And so we still serve all 3 of those products today, and have been working with the Rockheads and with ISFA, NSI, SFA, and networking and learning a lot from all of you, which has helped us, be where we are today. So.
Thank you, Joe, Justin, and Eric. And I'm Blake Christensen. I have a fabrication shop in northern Utah, about 7 locations. I work with the Natural Stone Institute. Excited to be here. Excited to share some ideas. And so, and this is your forum today. We want to ask a lot of questions. We want to get you guys excited. Get some ideas, but we do have a few topics that we thought we'd start with. Let's see, there we go. Yeah, this is an open forum, but so let's start there. Actually, is there any questions that you may have brought with you as you come to this? Any general questions? Any pressing matters? Everybody has everything figured out? Yeah,
It's such an easy business, so it's not a lot. It's pretty simple, right?
It's turnkey. It's all turnkey. Yeah. Yeah.
There seems to be a lot of porcelain slabs that's coming to the market, and already we have issue with silicases, for the quartz and stuff. So I know that Australia is completely banned quartz, and California is kind of trying to impose a ban. And I'm not sure what's the future of quartz is, but we are selling a lot of quartz throughout US, and porcelain is coming into the market right now. So where do you think it's going to shape the future,
So if I can rephrase the question, how is silicosis and silica going to reshape the future, or how is it going to shift in porcelain? Okay, perfect, because that was actually the first thing we were going to talk about is silica.
Sounds like that was planned.
Yeah, I did plan that, but yeah, let's address that question real quick. How is porcelain and other products affecting the market share and affecting what we? So many things already. How are we going to react to it? How are we going to plan for that? Anybody want to give that one a shot? How do we plan for? How do we react to the different materials that are in the market?
Okay, so the question, I guess, is multifaceted. One is, how do we deal with the silica and the products that we have today, and then how does that impact the future? Can you guys hear me okay in the back? Are we okay? All right. So I think we can probably all agree that the most valuable part of our business is our people, right? So we all have a responsibility to take care of our employees or our teammates, and we all want to do that. So, the first thing we need to do is, since we are fabricating, in our case, about 70% of our product is quartz that we're fabricating today, we need to make sure that we take care of the people that we have. And so, the way we've addressed silica is when OSHA passed the regulation, the most recent regulation in 2018 that established a PEL of 50 and an action level of 25, we decided that we would take the approach of partnering with OSHA and brought in consultative services. And so for the last 6 years or so, we've been working with OSHA and asking them to help us make sure we're compliant. And so we just finished our third round every 2 years with them, and that's been very helpful. It gives us a peace of mind, gets our employees peace of mind knowing that we're doing the right things, and where we do have struggles, we're addressing those. So, one of the things that we've done recently is we took the NSI training module that's out there for silica. It's, 15, 20 different modules. And we created a matrix for our entire company. One of our objectives this year was to train every employee in the company on the level of understanding they need to have with regard to silica and silicosis. And so our shop people and our shop managers needed to go through all that training, okay? Our department heads, like in accounting and in sales, they worked on maybe 10 of the 15, 20 modules. So everybody had to complete that training, so we all understand what the issue is, and we make sure that we're addressing it properly, okay?
So if I'm understanding that right, Joe, even your secretaries, even your salespeople were exposed to this training, and you've trained them, and has that helped?
It has. Everybody now understands, and when we're talking about silica in the shop and why PPE is necessary and why we're doing industrial hygiene testing, why we're doing it, right? There's people showing up with these cyclones that they pin on the body, and why are we doing it? And so it kind of works with the culture in our company, and that is taking care of each other, be your brother's keeper. And so, we've addressed silicosis like we do with any other challenge in the company and make sure we take care of each other.
Joe, I just want to add, though, so one of the things that you just heard, I think gets not enough recognition, which is being intentional, right? I always say in the customers and clients that I work with is culture is going to happen. And great leaders get in front of it and understand to be very intentional and make it what you want. That's making it what you want, compared to letting it happen and you lose control of that, right? So your actions and behaviors, leading by example, show and demonstrate to your entire workforce what is the priority, what matters the most. And I think that gets, we lose sight of that. And the day-to-day gets busy, you get all these distractions that go on, right? Very unpredictable business. But that level of intentionality of saying, I'm going to be prioritizing this, and this is why we're doing it, you're much more likely to build that teamwork and to build that buy-in from the people, which goes a long way, because you can't do it without that, right?
So to your other, continuing on your question about, where does it go from here in the market? You've got some manufacturers that are approaching it by reducing the amount of quartz in their product. You have others that are not. I think our job as fabricators to make sure that we protect our people regardless. So, we cut a lot of different brands of quartz product, and we make sure that we stay below the action level in our shops so that regardless of what we're cutting, we're below the action level to making sure we're keeping our employees safe. As far as what that means for the market, I think that's going to depend on how we react and how aggressive we are as an industry in doing the right thing and demonstrating that to our customers. So one of the things that we're doing as a company is, we're working on drafting statements that explain to our customers, here's all the steps that we are taking to make sure that our employees are safe and understand that this product, when it gets in your home, is not dangerous. Okay, the exposure is at the fabrication level, not in your home at the installation level.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And so let's. I think our next slide is actually on silica. Yeah, silica and silica safety. There we go. So thank you for that. But let's talk a little bit about what. As I travel to different shops, this is one of the worst things that I hear is I already cut wet. I don't have to worry about silica. Does anyone have that sentiment, or does anybody hear that? Is that I don't have to worry about it. It's not a big deal. I can guarantee if that is your mindset right now, you need to worry about it. It is. I mean, we cut wet. There's lots of things that still need to be done to make sure that your employees are safe. And the biggest push right now from the Natural Stone Institute and ISFA together is that we're trying to study and making sure that we can show that the products can be cut and processed safely. That's the biggest thing. So with that, and on that note, we've got Mark here. We've got a few others from the Natural Stone Institute. There's a QR code on this, and then I've got a handout that we'll pass out that has a QR code for the Natural Stone Institute Silica Safety Certificate that Joe mentioned. It's something I think all of you guys use.
So another big part of a very fragmented industry, right, is coming together as fabricators, which you don't find a lot. And the California standard, the OSHA standard now that's being suggested out there, has a respirator component to it, right? So if that becomes the norm for our entire industry, think how that changes the way we hire, changes the way the job experience goes for our people. It's hard enough to hire for this space as it is, but how much more difficult will that job be wearing, a spacesuit, essentially? Think of it like that. And that's why every one of these organizations, NSI, Rockheads, ISFA, coming together and saying, hey, listen, if our voice is not aligned and our voice is not loud enough, and you just go home and you bury your head in the sand and don't bring awareness to this, that's a very likely outcome, is that this becomes a standard. This is how these things happen, is they become, hey, we're going to fractionally try it over here in California, and then it gets rolled out to the rest of the country. So if it's not a concern for you today, it should be because of this. Unless you have no issues hiring, and you can hire and recruit people with spacesuits, that's that much easier.
Now I've got to work with a hazardous product.
That's right.
And yeah, exactly. And you need to pay me more for sure. So tomorrow at 1 o'clock, just a quick plug, there's going to be a whole presentation on silica. They had one yesterday. But right now, we need fabricators' help. If you are air monitoring, if you have surveys, what we're trying to do is establish data. Natural Stone Institute and ISFA have partnered with Yale University, and they're trying to collect as much data that they can to say, hey, these products can be fabricated safely, and we need fabricators' help collecting that data and completing some surveys with historical data. It's completely anonymous. Your personal and company information will not be disclosed, but that's what we're reaching out to fabricators and asking for that data, asking for that help. So tomorrow, 1 o'clock, and also we have these QR codes. There's a QR code at the bottom here that has the links to that information. So quick plug. Thank you very much, and it's important. Silica, it's absolutely important.
And like Blake said, it is anonymous, so everybody needs to participate in that. All the results are going to get wiped once the surveys are done. There's nothing in it other than information, right, that's going to help us, not hurt you as a fabricator. And we're asking everybody to kind of come together and do your share to help out the greater good, if that makes sense.
And interesting enough, you said that we're looking at alternative products, a sintered product or a porcelain product with less silica content. The regulations really don't distinguish that. It's going to be all products, based on how the regulations are currently being written. For pretty much most, anything with 10% or 0.01% of silica content. So it affects all fabrication, and it's very, very important. Anything else? Have we beat that one to death? Have we? Any other questions, just real quick, on silica or the importance of making sure we're participating in these studies?
I would just throw in one more plug. If you're just starting to look into this issue, certainly the NSI training is a great place to start. It's an easy way to train yourself and your team. And also, just a plug for OSHA consultative services. Just quick show of hands. Has anybody used OSHA on the consultative side, not the enforcement side? Good experience? Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that we've been working with OSHA for about 6 years. And we did that for a couple reasons. One is I sleep better at night knowing that I'm working with OSHA on my terms. And what I mean by that is, we invite them in. And so every 2 years or so, they come in. We do an industrial hygiene portion, then we do a safety portion. We just completed industrial hygiene last week. And so they come in, and we sit down and review of all of our programs, our silica exposure plan, our NSI training that we just did, shared the link with them so they can see what the actual training looks like. And then they actually do industrial hygiene testing. We're in the state of North Carolina, but I believe most states do this as well. They'll do the industrial hygiene testing for you at no cost. So when we do an industrial hygiene test and we pay a consultant, we pay about $4,500 every time they test in our shop. OSHA does it for free. And when you're working with OSHA consultative, you don't get cited if they find something. They're working with you to help you solve the problem. So they will write up the notice, but it's not a citation with a fine attached to it. You are required to address it, but you'd either be spending the money to address it that way or through being fined through enforcement. I'd rather do it on the front end and do it in a way that's proactive.
And they're giving you the answers to the test.
They're giving you the answers
You're doing
to
the right
test.
thing.
That's right.
I'd be curious, Joe. Joe's got an amazing facility, but you already have a great facility. What changes or what suggestions were made as a result of doing this consultation and trying to get your silica levels down?
So a couple of the changes that we made were, we did the first industrial hygiene testing back in 2018 when the rule went into effect. And we were under 50, but we had a couple of people that were over 25.
What does that mean? Like under 50?
Under 50, it's like micrograms per liter.
Perfect.
The permissible exposure level with the new regulation in 2018 was 50, I think it's micrograms per liter or something, whatever measurement that is. Okay? And that's something the industrial hygiene, when they test it, they can tell you what your levels are. The action level is 25. So if you're over 25, you need to retest every 6 months until you get 2 successive tests below 25 saying that, yes, your facility is safe based on the action level. Okay? If you are above 50, that means you may have to take some type of action, whether it be an engineering control, job rotation, whatever it is you have to do to address it to get back down below 50. Okay? So in our first testing, we were between 25 and 50 with a couple of employees. We had to add more ventilation to the facility, so we put more fans in to move air quicker through the building. We also bought, we call it a Zamboni. It's like a little tenant wet sweeper. And so every morning we start our shift by scrubbing the floors with our wet sweeper and getting up all that white silica that dries overnight on your floor. And so we implemented those two things as a result of the first round and got everybody below 25.
And I've heard of companies that the floor scrubbers, is there companies that'll lease those out to help with the cost? Because they get expensive, don't they?
Yeah, we actually bought ours used, and I think we paid maybe $3,000 or $4,000, but it's well worth the investment. I mean, you're investing in your employees, and it's something they see every day, knowing that you're doing something for them to take care of them.
And when you look at the biggest culprits, too, of what causes the ratings to go way up, it is usually the debris that the forklifts are spreading around your shops and your manufacturing facilities, right? So if they're going inside, outside all day long, or they're going in areas where the shop floor is not cleaned, right, that is usually the biggest culprit. If you can get that up and get it into the trenches and get it out of your environment, it's half the battle.
So even where the slab's stored, not necessarily processed.
Yeah, if you really want to know how your shop looks, go in there on a Saturday if you're not running, right? So it's dried overnight. We all look good when we're wet. But when you come back in after everything's dried out, that's when you really see where the silica is. If it's white, that's silica, right? Slab storage, on top of slabs, on top of your CNC control panels, on top of all your machine, on top of all the cabinets in your shop.
I like things very black and white and simple. And one of the things that the OSHA voluntary program will do is they want to see that you have a program. A program is simply a process, right? For whether I like to say closing out your day. Like, it's a process where you define what it is, but it typically can be as simple as, hey, everybody's taking an area and it's going to be clean. That's it. It's going to be, this is what right looks like. You take a picture, you educate your team. How do you do it? But it has to be a process. They call it a program of what right looks like. And it's just defining that, and again, being intentional on the front end of communicating it to your people and then educating them on how to do it. And then the most important part, holding them accountable to make sure it gets done. Deepa.
Aren't the installers at more risk because they are outside and they may be cutting backsplash? All this takes into effect inside a shop, but really, I feel like the exposure is outside an installed field.
I'm no expert, but how it was explained to me is that installers, even if they have a minimum mask on and they're cutting something outside, and I would say in a responsible manner, they will not have the exposure of the people that are in your shop that are nonstop breathing this dust that's airborne, because it dissipates so quickly outside. There's just so much volume of space and air and wind and what have you. But I think they have to be smart about it. If they're, setting up little huts inside somebody's house where, they're trying to contain the dust and then the installer's in there cutting with no mask on, that could be a problem.
And does anyone use or practice, we would take weed sprayers and pressurize them and just trickle water, or on the job site, ways to mitigate some of that. But I've heard the same thing, that if you're outside, if you can use a little bit of water, just do the best you can, but also being outside really helps.
I'd be more concerned with the homeowner's Mercedes that gets the dust trickled on it and then it scratches because, they're cutting upwind and there's a fancy new car that you now have to get detailed.
And your insurance always covers fancy new cars, right? So, no, that was a perfect question. Thank you. Any other questions regarding safety or silica? I'd be curious. I hear a lot. We've been talking about, getting safety or getting OSHA, consultative in. We've been talking about it for years. What is the difference? What causes you to push the button and finally do it?
I think I go back to just it's a choice, right? It's an attitude thing of, I think if you're going to be in a position of owning a factory and a business, you have an obligation to the health and wellness of your people, first and foremost. I think it's my own personal opinion, but I think, they're trusted, they're coming there every day. You better provide that safe work environment. And if you can't, and I think the roadmap to get there is this voluntary program, right? I just don't understand why people wouldn't do it. They do make it very easy. It's non-threatening. They're giving you the solution of what right looks like, and all you have to do is do it. That's it. And it just goes. If people aren't willing to do that, Blake, I just think maybe you should, look in the mirror first of all of whether you have the responsibility and should be running a business.
I love that word you used, Eric, is intentional, being intentional about it. Thank you. Any other questions regarding safety or silica? Anything?
Blake, do you know anything, or the panel, what happened in Australia? What happened to the countertop industry once they banned it?
That's a great question. I don't know that I'm qualified to answer, but I'll tell you what I know, and then I know that there's still supply in Australia that is still being consumed, but I do not know what is going to fill that void yet. Whether it's an alternative product, I don't know.
Mark probably
Yeah,
would be
Mark.
the most qualified to talk about this. I think that they banned quartz of being fabricated, so you can't even get it done over there now.
Yeah, it's banned. Hey, Kartik. It is banned, and it's still undecided. They're going through ongoing negotiations because there is still a lot of landed material sitting on the ground in inventory in Australia. They don't know what to do to dispose of. There are also contractual obligations for ongoing projects that are specified and supposed to be fulfilled with those manufactured quartz materials. So I understand there's additional legislation and negotiations ongoing on how to use that up, or how they'll be allowed to use that through the end of the year, but I don't think there's a definite rule on that yet.
I heard they're shipping it to California, is what. Just kidding.
I think ultimately what ends up happening is the manufacturers figured it out, right? And they just remove it from their product. Going back to the question of, is porcelain the answer? I don't know.
But to answer the other question, on the manufactured products, they do have the luxury of being able to reformulate or change the mix of their products. So even in the U.S., they're changing the mix. You're seeing a lot of materials here, low silica content, reduced silica content. So those are the types of products I know they're already marketing and preparing to go into Australia.
So, but replacing a solid slab product with a solid slab product with less silica is what hopefully will happen. Perfect, thank you. Any other safety and silica related questions? We've hit that one. Thank you. Let's see if I can get this to work. So the next thing that we had that we were going to talk about is the general state of the economy and where things are at. And anyone, Joe, Justin, you want to take a stab at this one? Go ahead, Justin.
The economy, I would say right now the economy is pretty touch and go, and I attribute that to being the election year. I think that's what a lot of people blame it on. Just basically everybody's insecurity right now. I don't know, we're still spending money and we're still bringing some in, so I think we're doing okay. Other than that, I wish I had the magic 8-ball on it.
So I view this maybe a little bit different than most. No matter what the economy is, I think there's opportunities. And you have to think about that a little bit in advance of what that may look like. And I can share with you a couple of examples of when I built my business about running out of the bunker when everybody else was running back. But we were very, again, intentional about understanding what that was and being, when the economy is contracting and everybody is, skittish. The smaller players it doesn't hurt as much because your payrolls, you can be a little bit more maneuverable. The larger players, it's a little bit more challenging. But if you can be in a high cash position, not overloaded with debt, it is going to create opportunities because now I can go buy when other people can't, right? And those deals will be out there. That's the first point. The second point is, I think it's a necessary cleansing to get some of the fabricators out of the market because, you meet and you talk to some of these other fabricators and you're like, oh my gosh, we just had that conversation. You're like, I can't believe that person is successful, despite themselves. And when the economy is not organized with them and helping create that momentum, then it gets tough for that person to survive, and they do go away. So I think it's more of a mindset of being prepared for it and being, again, in the driver's seat and in control rather than just being reactive. If you're just being reactive, then yes, it may hurt. But how can you, set your business up to fortify gas prices through the roof, right? Interest rates through the roof. None of those things help spur on consumer spending. In fact, they're anchor weights. And then you put an election year on top of that. There's not a lot of momentum to the good when it comes to that. And I think we all have in the back of our mind, well, if one candidate gets elected to the presidential office, will have an impact on the economy, and if another, it'll have a very different impact on the economy. So I think you have to just spend some time of thinking about how that impacts on your business and defining, maybe shedding some dead weight in your business and maybe channels that are not so profitable compared to customers and channels that are more profitable, and the identity of what you want to be when you grow up.
Yeah, and I think to add to what Eric said is, you're intentional and you prepare for the economy when it's going to have a downturn, right? So the time to prepare is not when you're in it, it's before, right? So you start thinking about, how do we diversify? How do we insulate ourselves the best we can? And so we're all impacted by the economy's swings. And I would love to tell you it was because I was intentional through the last recession. It wasn't. It was because we got shellacked. We were fortunate to make it through, and we learned to diversify. So today we're 50% commercial, 50% residential. And we've got about 7 different channels that we work in. Be it furniture, be it custom builder, be it general contractor, commercial, millwork commercial, a lot of different avenues that we play in that we feel that we can do well. And we stay out of the ones that we don't do well. And so certainly when markets tighten like they are right now, you do pull back a little bit maybe, or you go aggressively depending on what your position is and what your cash position is. But it's really preparation through the good times for when this comes, what do we do and how do we look at that? And so, one of the things I learned in 2008, 9, 10, 11 was diversify, get in a better cash position to ride it out, put yourself in a position when opportunities present themselves at a time when others may not be able to react, to be able to capitalize on that. And so, I think it really comes to, preparation and knowing that we're always going to have cycles, right?
Yeah, I'd be curious, maybe by quick poll, raise of hands, how many are in a good economic position right now, or good, things are busy and good right now? Flatlined, about the same, and down? And there's lots of hands that didn't go up, so it's you guys are down. You're up this year.
Our cabinetry division is down a bit from where it was, but our stone division is up or equal to.
Are you guys seeing more? Because I love the diversify. I mean, are you seeing more residential, more commercial, more remodel, more new construction? Anything?
So our commercial work this year is up. It's actually pretty strong. We got a nice backlog. The biggest challenge we have commercially this year is we do a lot of work through millwork companies, and they're struggling to keep up. And so, they're dealing with the overload they had from a couple years ago still, which is pushing our jobs behind, our scope of work behind. So, but commercially, we got a big backlog, and things are good. We're still selling jobs. We're quoting at record paces. Residentially, things are a bit slower. And so, we're reaching out, and one of the things that we've tried to do to help the residential side is trying to partner more with our material suppliers, because they all have national accounts that they're working with, or bigger accounts, and trying to get them to send us leads on jobs that we'd have a better chance of landing. And so commercially, we're pretty strong right now. Residentially, it's a little softer than we'd like it to be.
And the two cycles, right, are about 8 months apart between commercial and residential. When residential's up here, commercial's down, and when commercial's up, residential's down. So guess what's coming, Joe, with your commercial stuff?
Are you guys worried about your cabinet companies not paying the bill? We had We have some cabinet companies that we have worked with for years, and suddenly they're said that they are having cash problems, and now I'm terrified because they have some big AR balances.
So that's one of the things I would say. There's some very basic things that everybody should be doing to insulate themselves against that, right? Because once you lose money, it's hard to get it back. And your AR has got to be first and foremost, and your cash position, you need to know that every day and tighten those strings. The other thing is your biggest expenses, right? Your employees, overtime. You should be tracking that every single week. And if you're not, I would really encourage you to do that, because that can let the team will work as much as they want to unless they're advised or told or aligned or educated to not, right? And those are two things that really can, if you're that much more proactive compared to your competitors, right? Like, let's not take a job that we're concerned about getting paid from. Should we now consider getting prepaid for all of our direct consumer jobs? That's a very real thing, right? And I've got some great stories about, including my company, my old company, of that's a huge cash influx into your business that will help you right now. If you're not getting prepaid for your direct jobs, you should, right? And your AR, at what point, cut them off. Like, that's not a good mindset or methodology of just allowing your customers. You're not a bank, you're a stone fabricator. You know, if they want to push that out, then factor their business, you know, through them. Let them do it, not you. But those are considerations that your AR, you should be looking at every day and be concerned. And what can you do to help insulate?
So our single largest customer a couple years ago was one of our millwork customers. And they were doing quite well. At least they appeared to be doing quite well. They acquired several other companies, and they were growing very quickly. In fact, they outgrew their cash flow. And as them being our largest customer, you know, we had a pretty good accounts receivable building for them. And as it started to grow and the payment cycle got a little slower, I would meet with the owner, and by doing that over a period of time, I could see that he wasn't going to make it. You know, he was running out of lines of credit, and then he went to the Small Business Association and was getting rejected for loans. And he shared that with me as we had multiple conversations. And so, you know, at some point we cut him off. We leaned some of the commercial jobs that we had because it became pretty obvious where it was going to go. But we only knew that because we look at the AR all the time and stay on top of it. There are other fabricators, unfortunately, that didn't make it through because he didn't make it through. So to Eric's point, you know, it's so important to stay on top of that. To your point, yes, I'm always worried, and that's why we're looking at it, you know, continuously.
Perfect. I have a quick question. You touched a little bit about on it. If, say, you do have to, and there's two lines of thinking, obviously, right? You know, filling, if we're going through a little bit of a retraction, we need more work, we either fill the top end or we reduce the back end. You know, if you do have to reduce your company, how would you go about doing that? Is there a process or a logic? I know maybe that's a loaded question, but do you look at what do you look at reducing, you know, first, or what would that process look like?
I would go to the biggest buckets first, and I would go to the biggest opportunities first. And that's why I said the AR, right? Because the cash is king, and I can't stress enough of having a customer that doesn't pay you is the worst case scenario, because you're going through the burden of the expense of servicing that account, right? Then you're never going to get paid for it. That's, you know, insanity. So insulating those situations first and foremost. Second, the monitoring of your expenses, right? I'd go right to the employees. Everybody should have a number of what their win is for today, and hold them accountable to it, and let the system do the heavy lifting of, like, hey, listen, you have 3 weeks in a row of red performance. We can't have that right now. We cannot be, you know, your learning curve to get to where we need. It's all hands on deck, and we're all in this together, and there's got to be that level of accountability. And unfortunately, I've been around this industry for long enough and have enough exposure to a lot of other companies on how they run, and they don't have those accountabilities built into their systems, and they just don't have the visibility. And whenever somebody goes out of business, I say, you know, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, then suddenly. And you don't want to get caught in the suddenly. You know, and I don't think you can put committees together, to your point, Blake, of looking at this. If you're a big company, you're getting pulled in a lot of different directions, put a team together on it and say, what are the recommendations to reduce costs? They'll come up with some good things that you probably have never thought about if we give them permission to. So those are some of the things I would do.
Thank you. Any other, Justin, Joe?
And I'll say one other thing on the proactive side. Your pricing to your customers, your margins, right? When's the last time that's looked at? If you had 10% price increase across the board, what does that do for your bottom line? It's more significant than you think.
Perfect. Any other questions before we move on? Lots of. Here, let's.
You talked about the diversification. On the commercial side, economists have been talking about commercial real estate collapsing since COVID, and it's still, the collapse is still impending. How do you explain success in your commercial side?
Can you restate it?
You mentioned you have good, your commercial business is booming, is doing very well, is growing. How do you explain that, where the economists talking about commercial collapsing?
So what's attributed to the commercial success when commercial real estate may be a little bit more volatile right now?
It's back to if you look at any, I'm certainly not an expert economist, but they agree on one thing. There are different cycles in the economic cycle, and when residential is high, commercial is low, and they kind of flip-flop, right? So commercial is high right now. It's going to come down, right? So to explain that, it's the backlog of working through that. That'll eventually. There was a slide up earlier that there was another panel up here, and they said, look at the commercial building permits, right? That's a key performance indicator of what's coming. All commercial permits were down, right? So the actual business is happening now that they're up, but what's coming is that forecast, less permits applied for. That's going to mean less business months from now, right? So this is going to cycle out where commercial 8 to 12 months from now will be completely opposite of what it was today, which is higher.
And it could be too that, I know as I've been traveling, you see different pockets, and certain pockets are slow and certain pockets are really hot right now. And it could be that pocket is in a different stage of that cycle. So go ahead, Joe, did you?
Yep. In our case, in our market where our shop is at, commercial is okay. But about an hour away, Raleigh or Charlotte, both about an hour away from us, those areas are booming. So we've expanded the number of people we're calling on there. So as things were booming, a couple years ago, and we were all flat out, one of the areas that we focused on was building more, a greater spread of customers, right? So instead of having 5 big millwork companies, now we got 15. Some of those are small, some are medium size, and some are still big. But we picked up, all those other fabricators. So even though, our existing customers may be doing the same volume, we've got more of them. And so we've grown it that way. We've had a couple of competitors of ours that have struggled and exited the business altogether, and we were aggressive and went after that business, the ones that we felt fit us, and left the ones that hurt them, left those to go somewhere else. But we've been real aggressive about trying to pick up that business where it made sense and where the profitability existed.
Yeah, the pain in the ass customers keep raising their prices until they leave and go to your competitors. The heavy they're high touch, they're just a pain in the ass to deal with. Just keep raising prices until they go to your competitors.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember that we're coming off of a huge, to comparing it to what normal really is, we're coming off of a huge record-breaking, that may or may
Can you
not be.
explain normal in this industry?
Exactly.
I always say, how do you make a very unpredictable business predictable? That's the fabricators that figure that out, where they can make their daily business predictable, they win.
And maybe that's a good segue into this next section, because we've talked about diversification, we've talked about how to kind of weather these storms. The next thing that I'd like to learn more about is how do you sell that way? How do you intentionally attract, just like you said, Joe, hey, we went after these accounts that were vacant in the industry. How do you make that intentional? How do you create that sales culture and sales process to be intentional so that it includes that diversification? Any thoughts on that?
I'll speak to the commercial side, because residentially I don't think we've figured it out yet. I think we're still struggling there. Commercially, we kept our ears open. So one of the things we've heard over the last couple of years is, as we're working with general contractors, they're all asking, who do you know that does millwork that we can get to do these projects, because everybody that we know is slammed. And so as we heard that over and over again, we thought maybe there's an opportunity for us. We don't want to get into millwork. We don't want to open up a millwork shop. That's not us. But we know a lot of small millworkers who maybe aren't wide open right now. And so we started securing contracts with general contractors that included the millwork and the countertop portion. So instead of the traditional millworker gets a job from a GC and subcontracts a
So
countertop
packaging those
company,
two together.
we did it in reverse. We said, okay, we'll hook you up with the millwork company, run the contract through us, and we put our markup on the millwork and our product.
Good idea.
And so it's not a big part of our business yet, but it's something that is growing, and it's giving us new avenues. And again, we don't want to be a millworker. That's not our expertise. But we can certainly work with people that are. And we take where we are good, and I think that is managing projects and keeping people on schedules. And that's what the GC wants, right? They want to know that you're going to be there on time, on budget, and take care of any issues that come up.
I'll go. We don't do any commercial. We do 100% residential. We've expanded out of just countertops to cabinets, to flooring, giving the customer more options in our shop so they don't have to go anywhere else for anything. We're really good at solving their problems, making them feel like they're taken care of. We do not know how to get into the commercial business. It's not our thing, and we just keep customers happy on the residential side.
I really like that, Justin. Solving their problems. I mean, how do you bring that into your culture? How do you train your people how to do that? That's a hard nut to crack. But
unfortunately, I haven't really been able to train the guys to do it, so that's where I have to step in still. And I mean, we come up with ideas and we make things happen.
Eric, anything to?
Employees or selling or what?
Yeah, just how have you helped create a culture of this diversification, of satisfaction, and how do you take these ideas that we've been talking about and make them an intentional part of your culture?
Trying to think about how to articulate this
Sorry.
in the simplest way that gets the point across. So I believe that everybody wants to be successful. They want to come in every day and win, right? We have got to create an environment for that to happen. I say if you build a system that does the heavy lifting, you'll attract and retain and create an environment of thirst. And what do I mean by that? So if you went to any one of your employees and said, hey, what's your winning look like? And you had to quantify that. A lot of times the answer, they don't have the answer to that. It's a big question mark. They don't know whether it's been creative, not creative. They don't have that level of visibility. And one of the things that we did in our business that I think set us apart is that everybody had a number, right? Every day of this is what winning looks like in that role. So if you're a measure templater, this is what winning looks like for you. If you're a project manager, this is what winning looks like for you. And I'm just blown away about how many people operate a business or a department with no goals and objectives every day. And so we don't know whether we're getting closer to something or further away. And if we're not tracking those things, and I get it, it's hard in this business to track things. But picking out the things that are the most important, extracting them out of the very complicated lack of software options we have in this industry to make it easy to extract the data and say, hey, you're winning today. Why? How do you know that? I used to say, hey, there's a guard gate that is at the bottom of our parking lot, and every day they're going to come up to the guard attendant and he's going to say, were you successful today? And if they can't answer that question, yes or no, and then tell me why, hey, if I'm a shop employee and I get asked that question, were you successful today? And they say yes. And the guard attendant says, well, how do you know that? Well, because I know that if we hit over 6 square feet per labor hour, we're good. And today we were at 6.8. Whoop, the gate goes up, they drive off, and there's a sense of pride and accomplishment that goes with that. Your A players love it and thrive in it. Your C players feel very uncomfortable and weed themselves out. So I think spending the time to work on your business rather than in it every day and build those type of things, to me, it helps drive that company culture of attracting and surrounding the right people doing the right things that matter the most. I know that was probably longer than you wanted, but
I love that analogy.
As concise as I could put
Succeeding
it.
every day. What's a win look like? And I, you know, most people. I love that, Eric. That most people want to succeed, want to win every day.
I think it's human nature, right? We all, hey, you know what? Tell me I'm good. Give me recognition. It's what every human being craves, and we never do it.
Anything else to add on how to drive culture? How to drive that cultural, you know?
So one of the things that we do, we're still a small enough company that when we're interviewing somebody for a position in the company, whether it be a fabricator, whether it be somebody in accounting, sales, every first interview is with me. And what I am specifically interviewing for is cultural fit. You know, I'm assuming from the resume that I've scanned in advance that they're going to have a skill set that is attractive. Otherwise, they wouldn't come in for the interview. But the first interview with me is always looking for a cultural fit. Do I think that they can add value? Do I think that they'll be an A player here? Or are they going to be a C player that's not going to feel comfortable here? And you get a feel in a relatively short period of time how you think somebody's going to fit with your culture. Now, they're human beings, and I've been wrong on a lot. But we do the best we can to try to evaluate a cultural fit first, because we feel like we can train them to do anything else, right? What we do is not rocket science. So if we can get the right cultural fit, then we can train them to do whatever task it is they want to do. And so first interview is always with me, and then if they pass me, they go to the department head for the actual job-specific questions and discussions.
Hey Joe, could you have a great way of telling the story of your company with your new employees. You shared that with me. Would you mind sharing that a little bit about how you get, was it the CSS or the, yeah.
So our company is Carolina Custom Surfaces, CCS.
CCS.
And so we have a class called CCS 100. So this year we put everybody through CCS 100 because it's been a while. During COVID, we stopped doing the class because it's an in-person class that I lead. And that class is basically the company history. So I take them through, our company's about 20 years old. I take them through pictures of how we started, our very first piece of stone that we cut, some basic jobs that we did in the early days, and talk to them about how we started to how we got to where we are today. And there's a timeline that we go through. And we talk about all the milestones, including the challenges. You know, the recession is a big part of that class. And we talk about how our culture has developed, how we've developed our culture over the years and established our core values and why they are what they are, why our company exists, why do my wife and I have the company, what do we want to do? And so that class, CCS 100, this year was attended by everybody as a refresher, but we do it quarterly with any new employees that come into the company because we want them to know where we came from. It's one thing to walk into our company today and see where we are at the level of volume that we're at, but never know that, you know, we struggled with getting 30 culture marble tops out in 2004, and that was all we did. It's easy to forget that piece. So CCS 100 allows us to do that. CCS 200 talks about accountability. And so with our leadership team, they go through CCS 200, and that's how we build accountability into our evaluations and how we plot the future for employees coming in, because everybody coming in wants to know what their path is with the company, right? We all want to win. We all want to feel valuable and know, what can I do in this company? Where do I fit? And so part of CCS 200 is helping our leaders understand how to draw that out of everyone and understand, you know, I've got a couple of guys who've been with me for 14, 15 years. Started on the shop floor as a fabricator, and today he's my commercial operations manager. He runs everything commercial in the company. But he didn't just go from there to there. You know, he was a fabricator, then he was a department head, and then he ran the stone shop, then he became purchasing, then he became estimating, and now he is running all commercial. And that was a game plan that he and I mapped out years ago, and he stuck around through a lot of difficult times because he knew he had a path.
Anything else that Justin or Eric you'd like to add? We've got about 5 minutes left. I want to make sure we get all the questions answered. Is there any other questions that we have?
I just have a question about in terms of where you are finding employees, particularly qualified installers, or whether you're hiring people that are necessarily qualified off the bat, or if you're training them, and what places do you look for them? Because we're really struggling with finding the right people for our installation team.
So where do you find your employees, and how do you find qualified employees?
So the first thing we did, I say, fish in the right ponds, right? So if the statistics are right, 7 out of 10 employed people today are not happy with their job, their current job. That's the pond I want to be in. I don't want to be on Craigslist because I don't think we have to spend a whole lot of time on maybe what's in that pond. But typically what we looked for was we defined the job on the front end first, meaning measure templater, right? What is the skill set required to do that job and do it well? Strong attention to detail, right? They have a level of pride in making sure that it's right, because if it's not right, we all pay. Very, very costly. So once we define that, and we do it for every role in the organization, what's the most important skill of this role, then we start interviewing and recruiting for that role. So I agree with Joe that, you know, we like to hire the heart and soul. We'll teach you the skills and how to do the job. Because if we have the right DNA, they've got the skill set, they demonstrated that that's important to them. So in the interview process, going back to the measure template, hey, share a time when getting it right was really important. How did you do that? What happened when you didn't get it right? You know, and there's some learning. And if you keep digging into that, one or two things happens with that interview process. Either they get extremely credible and you feel really good that they do indeed have that skill set because they've given you excruciating details about getting it right was important. And they shared this example. It's kind of hard to fabricate those things on the fly. People will just start using theories to answer the question, like getting it right's important. I have a strong attention to detail because people tell me that. Compared to, well, we make trade show banners and getting it right was important. And one time I didn't double check my work and it was wrong. And this is what I did and put in place to make sure that that never happened again. And this is how I used it. Two very different answers.
So Eric, if I may, can I ask you, like, will you take a template tech, for example, a template measure position, and customize the questions that you ask that interviewer?
Sure would,
Okay.
yeah, because we got to teach this to all the managers. We had, at one point in time, I had 20 managers that were interviewing people for their departments, right? So we have to train the trainer, essentially, on what we're looking for.
So you're looking for somebody that pays attention
Yeah,
to
and
detail.
so
You're looking
the
for somebody that's...
easiest example would be a salesperson, right? If you're going to hire a salespeople, so what's important for the salesperson? Well, they need to hit sales goals, right? So show me, what was your goal last year, the company you work for now? Okay, they give it to me. What did you hit? Where did you rank on that? Will you show me your W-2 that validates that? Right? And that's where the rubber meets the road.
But again, being intentional about it. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Anything else?
We work with the local VOTEC. That way we get some young kids. Sometimes they come in as interns. They're free in the summer. We like to train them. We found when we hire people who say they're fabricators, who tend to know everything, they don't exactly work out for us. So we'd prefer to train our own in-house and see where they go from there.
So one additional thing that we do is we will work with some of the employment agencies in the area. And we try to we try to help them help us. We give them not a full job description, but for the jobs that we're looking to fill, we will give them the qualities and the attributes of the person that we're looking for. Kind of like Eric said, we're very intentional about, they need to be detail oriented, they need to be, focused, and we'll give them the qualities of the position that we're looking for in that person, and then ask them to, when they come to the interview, because we don't just have the agency send us somebody and they go to work, they come interview with me. And then I'm going to ask them all the questions that Eric mentioned. Demonstrate to me, talk to me about a time when you did X, Y, Z, and put them through the whole process. But we use the agencies to help us bring us candidates. But we don't just let us bring us any candidate. We give them, these are the attributes we're looking for. We also bring the agencies in and have them spend time with us in the building so they can see what those jobs are and get a feel for our culture, so they can be a screen before they ever get to us. Don't waste my time. Don't send me, just because you have 30 people that got laid off somewhere else, don't send me those 30 people. Okay, I want the one that really should be coming to us. And so we use the agencies, but we put in the time on the front end to help them help us. And then we do the traditional, Indeeds and things like that as well. But it all goes back to the intentionality. And
I don't think people spend enough time preparing on the front end of define the role you want, and are you willing to put the time in ahead of time on interview questions or preparing for that. It drives me crazy. I don't have time for that. Well, you certainly have time to then replace this person 3 more times, right? It's very costly.
Perfect, very good. Well, thank you very much. We're out of time today, but appreciate all. Any last minute questions that we want to? Just one last minute? Okay, hurry.
Installers that are aging, who have been with the company for 15, 20 years, now what do we do? They're coming and asking.
Set them off on the Granite Sunshine Trail to the measure world. Those end up being the best measure techs because they understand the problems or challenges. It won't be for all of them, but it will be. So I've seen that transition and done it very well. And the other is the CAD department, or this is going to sound crazy, they end up making really good salespeople too because they know so much about the product and they don't come across as, the used car salesman trying to get something. They just come across as what they are, which is credible.
But you have to call it the Granite Sunset World.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent feedback. Thank you again very much. Round of applause for our panelists. And then tomorrow morning, 10:30, we're going to be back here about developing an effective team to drive production. And then quick reminder, happy hour is sponsored by the Natural Stone Institute in room B303, Hall B303. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.